What if the first tanks into North Korea weren't American, but Chinese? I know, it sounds unthinkable. China, North Korea's oldest ally, crossing the Yalu River in force. Not the US, not South Korea, but Beijing, making the first move. To most people, that's fiction. China and North Korea, they've stood together for decades. They fought side by side in the Korean War. They share a communist legacy. They push back against Western influence. On paper, they're allies. But in geopolitics, paper alliances don't hold everything together. Nations don't act out of friendship. They act out of power, pressure, and survival. And here's the truth. North Korea might be more of a liability than an ally. It's armed, it's volatile, it's unpredictable, and it's right on China's doorstep. So what happens if that regime starts to crack? Beijing's been asking that question for years, and behind closed doors, it's preparing answers. Because in a collapse, the biggest threat to China isn't America, it's chaos. If Pyongyang implodes, the future of Asia could shift overnight, and China wants both hands on the steering wheel. Let's break down a scenario few dare to say out loud, but many quietly prepare for. A Chinese invasion of North Korea. Not to conquer, but to stop a disaster. North Korea needs China to survive. Since the 1950s, China has kept the North alive. Fuel, food, trade. Today, over 90% of its trade flows through China. Without it, the regime collapses. But below the surface, things are cold, tense. China doesn't trust Kim Jong-un, it tolerates him. Barely. Every nuclear threat, every missile test, it embarrasses Beijing and draws American warships closer. That's not just awkward, that's dangerous. China has red lines, unspoken but firm. 1. No collapse. That means refugee waves, insurgents, and a humanitarian nightmare. 2. No US troops on the border. A reunified Korea under Seoul brings American tanks to China's backyard. 3. Keep the nukes locked down. Kim's weapons are a headache, but loose nukes, that's a nightmare. So what could push China to cross the line? It starts with collapse, a coup, a breakdown, factional war. Suddenly, the nukes are unguarded. Command structures vanish. Rogue generals start making calls. China might not have time to negotiate. Even if the US or South Korea tries to move in, China might move faster. Not to fight them, but to make sure it still has a seat at the table. This wouldn't be conquest, it'd be containment. Better to seize control than be sidelined by history. China wouldn't call it an invasion, it would say it's a stabilization mission, maybe even a humanitarian response. The mission? Secure the nukes, lock down the border, set up a friendly temporary government. This isn't just theory. Think tanks, leaked memos, defector intel. They've tracked Chinese troops drilling for this. They've mapped military roads near the border. South Korean intelligence has seen the simulations. This isn't a fantasy, it's preparation. Could China pull it off? Militarily, yes. The PLA has hundreds of thousands of troops in the region, ready, trained, equipped. China's spent decades building roads, railways, and staging points. It's like the fire station's fully stocked, the sirens just haven't gone off yet. But once they roll in, all bets are off. North Korea's army is massive, loyal, brutal, especially to the Kim dynasty. China could find itself in a grinding insurgency it never planned for. In the world, how does it respond? First, with shock, then maybe with silence. Because no one wants to lead a collapsing North Korea. It's radioactive, literally and politically. A Chinese intervention, if it avoids catastrophe, might become the least bad outcome. Even the US might cooperate, quietly. But not everyone would stay calm. South Korea would see its reunification dream slipping away. Japan might start rearming, fast. Russia might cheer Beijing on from the shadows. China, meanwhile, gets to play the grown-up, the stabilizer, the power behind the curtain. Picture the future. North Korea split in two. The South under Seoul and Washington, the North under Chinese boots. or Chinese proxies. It's not a new Cold War. It's a new map. For South Korea, it's a cold, bitter pause. For China, a strategic jackpot. A buffer, a chip, a message. And the ripples? They go global. Japan boosts defense. Taiwan tightens its grip. Southeast Asia checks its bank accounts and its alliances. And Washington realizes for the first time in 70 years, it's locked out of part of Korea. And China hasn't fired a shot. But it just gained leverage in every future negotiation. The US response? On camera, calm diplomacy. Off camera, Pentagon meetings, shifting war plans. But it all rests on a risky idea that China can control what happens next. And that might be the most dangerous illusion of all. What if the Kim loyalists fight back? What if US and Chinese soldiers collide in the dark, guns raised? What if the people revolt, not just against their leaders, but against all outsiders? Protests, missile launches, refugee camps, markets crash, oil spikes, supply chains seize. So yes, for China, an invasion might be the least bad option, but the least bad can still go very wrong. To most, this idea sounds absurd, impossible. But to military planners in Beijing, Washington, Seoul, it's not absurd. It's already on the table. This isn't about communism or loyalty. It's about geography, stability, power. If Pyongyang falls, China won't wait. It'll act. Deliberately, coldly. Because what the world sees as tanks crossing a river, China sees as a firewall going up. And while we all focus on Taiwan or the South China Sea, the quietest flashpoint might be right here. Because if this fault line breaks, the aftershocks won't stop at the DMZ, they'll hit every capital. And here's the twist. What if, instead of fighting, China and the US cut a deal, a silent agreement, a shared no-go zone, a new kind of cold cooperation? Because in this global chess game, the most dangerous moves are the ones you never even saw coming. So what would you do if this happens tomorrow? And more importantly, who gets to shape what comes next? What's your take? Is China quietly preparing for this, or is the West just overthinking? Tell us in the comments, and if you want more real-world scenarios like this one, hit subscribe, like the video, and share it with someone who thinks geopolitics is boring. They won't after this.